The doors of the Hollowbrook pack house opened, and Thea smelled him before she saw him. It went through her like a hand closing around something inside her chest. The jug slipped out of her fingers and broke across the floor at the head of the treaty table, and 400 people turned to look at the Omega standing in the wreck of it. Thea did not hear one of them. She was listening to her wolf. Mate. Her wolf had never spoken like that in the year since she had come. It was not a whisper. It was a claim. Loud, certain, joyful, and it was aimed at the man in the doorway. Ronan Vassar, Alpha of Ironmarch, the enemy who had been killing Hollowbrook wolves for 60 years, standing inside the Hollowbrook pack house with his warriors at his back, because he had come to make peace. No, Thea thought. No, not him. Please, not him. If you're enjoying this story already, take a second to subscribe and hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. He had already stopped walking. His head turned. He found her across 10 feet of open floor, and Thea watched the Alpha of Ironmarch forget an entire hall of his enemies. Then he came for her. He moved so fast his own warriors were still reaching for him when he reached her. His hand closed around her arm, and heat went up it, sharp and bright, nothing she had ever felt from any touch in her life. He pulled her in against him. His head went down, and his face pressed into the curve of her neck, and he breathed her in. Thea could not move. Her wolf sang. Her body would not obey her. He lifted his head. His eyes had gone dark at the center. Mine, Ronan Vassar said. The hall came apart. Rhett Vaughn was out of his chair and across the floor before the word finished. He took Thea by both shoulders and tore her out of the other Alpha's hands and put her behind his own back, and every warrior on both sides of the room reached for a weapon at once. Take your hands off her. Rhett's voice had dropped into something Thea had heard, perhaps twice in her life. You are standing in my house. She is my mate. She is mine. Neither of them looked away. Neither of them stepped back. Then they released their pheromones. Thea felt it hit her in the knees. 2 Alphas pushing at full strength inside a closed hall, each one forcing his dominance out to see whose the room would answer to, and every wolf beneath them buckling in between. Down the length of the table, warriors braced against the wood. An elder gripped the arm of his chair. The serving girls near the wall went to the floor together, and Thea, the lowest rank in that hall, went down hardest of all. She landed in the broken pieces of her own jug. The glass opened her palm. She felt it go in and heard herself make a sound she was ashamed of, small and thin, and it cut through that room louder than either Alpha. The weight vanished. Both of them broke off at the same instant. Ronan moved first, one stride, already reaching for her. Rhett got there first. He was on his knees in front of her with her bleeding hand between both of his, before the other Alpha had covered half the distance, and Thea saw Ronan Vassar stop dead in the middle of that floor, with his arm still out, and watched something break behind his face. He could not reach her. Everyone in that hall watched him fail to reach her. Look at me. Rhett's thumb was under her chin. Thea, look at me. Are you all right? I'm all right. You're bleeding. It's nothing. It was not nothing, and both of them knew it, and neither of them was talking about her hand. Give her to me, Ronan said. Rhett did not turn around. No. She is bleeding, and you are the reason. So are you. That landed. Thea saw it land. Saw the Alpha of Ironmarch take it, and have nowhere to put it, because it was true, and because the woman he had crossed a hall for was on the floor of it. Rhett stood and drew her up with him, and did not let go of her hand. Go to the kitchens, he said quietly. Get it wrapped. Don't come back in here. And Thea went. She felt every eye in that hall follow her. She felt her wolf throw herself against the inside of her ribs, screaming to turn around, dragging backwards so hard that her breath came short, and she kept walking, because obedience was the one thing she had been good at her whole life, and because the man whose hand she had just let go of was the man she had loved since she was 8 years old. She did not look back at Ronan Vassar once. She did not have to. Her own body punished her for every step, a long ache dragging out of her chest, deepening with the distance, her wolf clawing to turn her around. It was the first time in 19 years that walking away from something had hurt. Behind her, Rhett's voice went across the hall. "You came here for a treaty. Sit down with my elders, and take it, or take your warriors and go home." Ronan Vassar answered him without raising his voice. "I'll sit. I'll hear every term they've written." A pause. "But understand me now, in front of your pack and mine. I am not leaving this territory without her." The doors of the hall swung shut. Thea stood alone in the corridor, with her back against the wall and her palm bleeding through her fingers, and understood that the war her pack had spent 60 years fighting had just moved inside her own body. The kitchen women wrapped Thea's hand without speaking to her. That was how she knew the whole pack house had already heard it. Maeve worked the cloth around her palm, with her mouth pressed flat, and 2 girls by the wash bench stopped pretending to scrub and stared, and nobody asked her a single question, because nobody had to. "This needs stitching," Maeve said. "It'll heal on its own. Not clean, it won't." Maeve pulled the knot tight. Then, quieter, without looking up. "Is it true?" Thea did not answer. Maeve nodded slowly, as though the silence had been the answer, and set her hand down like something that belonged to someone else now. 19 years I've watched you carry trays," she said, "and the moon goddess gives you to him." "She didn't give me to anyone." "Girl," Maeve looked at her then, and there was no unkindness in it, which somehow made it worse. "That's not how it works, and you know it." Thea got out of the kitchen before anyone else could be gentle with her. She went up the back stairs because the back stairs were what she had always used, and she was halfway along the upper corridor when she heard the doors of the great hall open below and the sound of men leaving a room where nothing had been agreed. She stood in the dark at the top of the stairwell and listened to her own pack argue about her. Elder Harrow's voice came up the stairwell, and he did not lower it. "She is an Omega, Rhett. An Omega, and you would hand this pack a war for her." Thea understood that he had not lowered his voice on purpose. She did not hear what Rhett said. She heard the silence after it, which was the same silence that had followed him in the hall, and she was beginning to be frightened by it. He found her an hour later, sitting on the sill of the window at the end of the corridor, where she had sat since she was small. He did not say anything at first. He took her wrapped hand and turned it over and looked at it, and his jaw moved. "I put you on that floor," he said. "You didn't?" "I did. Him and me together." He let out a breath. "I've never done that to you in my life. Rhett." He touched you. It came out of him low and fast, and there it was, the thing he had been holding since the hall. "He had his hands on you before I was even out of my chair. You pulled me away from him. Not fast enough. Everybody in that hall watched him reach you before I did." Thea did not know what to say to that. It was true, and she had seen his face when he realized it, and there was no version of comfort that would not sound like a lie. Rhett sat down on the sill beside her. For a moment, he was just a man she had known her whole life, tired and out of answers. "Let me mark you," he said. Thea's heart went sideways. "Tonight," he said, "before he signs anything, before he can put one word in front of the elders about what he's owed and who goes home with him. If you carry my mark, there is nothing left for him to claim. A bond he can argue. A mark he cannot. Rhett, you'd be Luna." He turned to face her. "That isn't a consolation prize. That is what I have wanted since I was 12 years old, and you know it. I waited because I thought we had time." She wanted to say yes. That was the thing that would sit in her chest for weeks afterward, that her human heart, the whole of it, the part that had loved him for years, wanted to say yes. And her wolf rose up inside her and refused. It was not a thought. It was a wall. Every part of the animal in her recoiled from the idea of another man's teeth at her throat, and it recoiled so hard that her breath went short and tears came up out of nowhere, and she pressed her good hand flat against her own chest. Rhett watched it happen. She saw him watch it. She saw him read it correctly, the way he had read her since she was 8 years old. "She won't have it," he said quietly. "She isn't me. Rhett, she isn't me." "No." Rhett's voice did not change. "But she's in there." "I chose you," Thea's voice cracked. "In that hall. Everybody saw it. He reached for me, and it was your hand I took, and I walked out of that room when you told me to, and I never once looked back at him. I know. Then that is what matters." "I know," Rhett said again, and stood, and did not look at her. "Sleep. Nothing is being signed tonight." He had reached the corner of the corridor when she said his name. He stopped. "What did he ask for?" Thea said. "In the terms." Elder Harrow was shouting. Rhett was quiet long enough that she knew the answer would be bad. "Hunting grounds," he said. "They're people crossing our land without being challenged. They're wounded, treated by our healers." He turned his head, not quite far enough to look at her. "And one more thing," added at the bottom of the page. "What thing?" "Nothing that is happening." "Rhett, what thing?" "He wants you at the table," Rhett said. "Every session. In the room. Where he can see you." Thea did not move. "And if you refuse him?" "Then there is no treaty," Rhett said. "And by winter Iron March is killing us again, and every family in this pack will know exactly who to blame." He walked away down the corridor. Thea stayed on the sill until the house went quiet, holding her bandaged hand in her lap, listening to the thing inside her chest that would not stop pulling toward the east wing, where the Alpha of Iron March had been given rooms. At first light, they came for her. The elders wanted her in the hall. They put a chair at the treaty table for her, and Thea did not know how to sit in it. That was the thing nobody understood. She had stood in that hall 1,000 times with a jug in her hands, and never once sat down in it. And now there was a chair waiting for her, halfway along the table, in plain view of every man in the room. Elder Harrow never once spoke to her, or looked at her while he spoke. He said his piece to Rhett with his shoulder turned, as though she were a draft coming in under a door. Rhett sat at the head. He had not looked at her since she came in, and across the table, in the seat opposite hers, was the Alpha of Iron March. He did not stare at her. That was the first thing that surprised her. She had spent the whole night braced for it, for the weight of him, for the arm reaching out across a floor, and instead Ronan Vassar listened to the elders read their terms with his hands loose on the table in front of him, and did not look her way once. Her wolf did not care. Her wolf pushed at her ribs the entire morning, pleased and restless, close enough to him to be happy, and not close enough to be quiet. Thea kept her eyes on the wood. "Unarmed," Elder Harrow said. "Any of your people who cross our land come unarmed. That is not negotiable." "Then guarantee they go home again," Ronan said. "You are asking my wounded to walk into the house of the pack that wounded them, with nothing in their hands. Put their safe return in writing, and I'll agree to it." It went on like that. It was not shouting. It was worse than shouting. It was two packs reading their dead out to each other in flat voices, one name at a time, while Thea sat between them with her bandaged hand in her lap. Then Ronan said, "She hasn't spoken since she sat down. I'd like to hear what she thinks." The room stopped. Elder Harrow made a sound. One of the Iron March warriors along the wall shifted his weight. Rhett's head came up for the first time that morning. "I beg your pardon," Harrow said. "When the fighting starts, your warriors go out, and everyone else waits in the house to hear who is dead." Ronan turned his hands over on the table. "She has waited in that house her whole life. She is sitting right there. Ask her." Nobody spoke. Thea felt the whole hall turn toward her, the way it had turned toward her the day the jug broke, and every single thing she had learned in 19 years told her to look down and say nothing and wait for it to pass. "Thea!" Rhett's voice, low. "You don't have to answer him." She knew that. She knew he meant it kindly. She had heard him protect her like that her whole life, and this was the first time it had made her feel small. "Unarmed is fine," she said. Elder Harrow turned around fully. "They should come unarmed," Thea said, and her voice did not sound like hers. "But not through the meeting ground. That is where the children play. Bring them along the low road, and nobody's mother has to watch a line of Iron March men walk past her door with her son in the yard." The silence went on a long time. "Write it down," Ronan said. "Alpha Vassar. Write it down, exactly as she said it." He was already looking back at Harrow. "And take the meeting ground out of it. She is right, and you have wasted the whole morning." They wrote it down. Thea sat with her hands in her lap, and her heart going hard, and could not have said what she was feeling. Nobody had ever written down a word she said. Nobody had ever asked her for one. At midday the session ended, and she went out into the yard where the cold could get at her face. Rhett came after her. He always came after her. "That was a trick," he said. "Rhett." He did that so the room would see him do it. His jaw was tight. He wants them talking about how the Iron March Alpha gave the little Omega a voice. By tonight, half this pack will be saying it. Is it a trick, if it worked? Rhett did not answer that. "I have spent my whole life keeping you out of rooms like that," he said quietly, "because rooms like that eat people like you. I know. That was love, Thea. I know it was." Her eyes stung. "That is what frightens me." He went back inside, and Thea stayed in the yard because she could not tell him the true thing, which was not about the table or the treaty or any term written on any page. Somebody had written her words down. She had said one sentence out loud in a room full of alphas and elders, and a man had stopped the whole morning to have it written into a treaty between two packs, and she could not stop thinking about it. Not because it was clever, because it had never happened before, and because she had not known, until it did, that she wanted it to. The pool turned over in her chest, and Thea started walking before she had decided to. She did not get far. Ronan Vassar came into the yard behind her and was in front of her by the time she reached the wall, and he did not touch her, and he did not have to. He simply stood where she had been going, close enough that she had to tip her head back to look at him, and every part of her body understood that she was not getting past him. "Your hand," he said. "It's healing." "It isn't." He took her wrist. The heat came up her arm the way it had in the hall, sharp and bright and impossible to breathe through, and she heard him make a low sound in his chest, and knew it had gone through him too. Her wolf threw herself forward. Thea's whole body swayed toward him before she caught it. He saw it happen. She watched him see it, watched his eyes drop to the half step she had taken and come back up, and something in his face changed, and it frightened her far more than the growl had. "There," he said quietly. "Let go of me." "Say it again with your feet where they were." Thea could not. He turned her palm over and looked at the bandage, and his thumb passed across it once, and every nerve in her arm lit up. "You have been awake all night," he said. "So have I. You have not eaten since yesterday. Your hands shake when I am not in the room, and they stop when I am. Do you know why? Don't. Because it is already begun." He leaned down. His breath moved the hair at her temple, and her eyes closed without her permission. "You can tell him whatever you like. You can tell yourself whatever you like. Your wolf does not lie, and she has been trying to reach me since the moment I walked through that door, and you have spent every hour since dragging her back by the throat." Thea's chest heaved. "Please," she said. "Please what?" She did not have an answer. That was the terrible thing. She opened her mouth and nothing came out. Because every true sentence in her led somewhere she could not go, and every safe sentence would have been a lie he could smell on her. Ronan let go of her wrist. He stepped back, deliberately, giving her the space she had asked for and had not asked for, and Thea's body screamed at the loss of him. "I am not a patient man," he said. "Ask anyone who has ever fought me, but I am not going to drag my mate out of this house by the arm, because the first time I ever saw you, I put you on the floor of it, and I will not do that to you twice." She was shaking. "So I am going to sit at that table every day," Ronan said, "and you are going to sit across from me. And every night you go up those stairs away from me, it will hurt worse than the night before, and one day it is going to be worse than whatever you think you owe him. And if it isn't, then it isn't," he said. "But I am not leaving this territory without you, Thea. Not for a treaty, not for either of our packs, not for anything on this earth." She went inside. She did not run, because running would have told him everything, and she made it all the way up the stairs before her legs gave out. And she sat down on the top step in the dark, with her wrist burning where he had held it, and cried for a man she had loved her whole life, and had not thought about once in that yard. The talks ran on after that. Thea took her chair each session, because Ronan's term put her there. She spoke when the terms touched the families who worked the borders, and every time an elder tried to talk over her, Ronan stopped the room and let her finish. He never spoke to her outside those hours. He never came near her. She understood that he was giving her the space to come to him on her own, and she hated how much she wanted to close it. Her wolf never settled. Every hour under the same roof as him, it pushed, to cross the floor, to stand nearer, to stop fighting. She held it down at the table and in the corridors, and lying awake at night, and holding it down was the only work she did. Rhett came to her in the yard on the fourth evening. "Walk with me." She walked. He did not touch her. "Do you remember the winter your mother died?" he said. "Rhett, I carried your water for a month. Nobody told me to. My father was furious about it. He stopped walking and turned to face her. You were an Omega, with no family and no rank. There was nothing in it for me. I chose you anyway. I chose you the year after, and every year since, when everyone in that house knew you were nobody." She could not look at him. "He looked at you once," Rhett said. "1 second. He did not know your name. He did not know one thing about you. And since that second you have not been able to stand up straight. That is not fair." "It is true, though." She had no answer for that. "So tell me something. When you feel that thing pulling at you, is that you, or is it an animal being handed an instruction and obeying it?" He waited, because if it is not yours, it is not love, it is obedience, and you have been obedient your whole life. "Stop. I am not asking you to choose me tonight." His voice dropped. "I am asking you to find out if there is anything of you left inside it." He went back in. Thea stood in the yard a long time. She wanted to tell herself he was wrong, and she could not do it, because she did not know one true thing about Ronan Vassar. She knew the sound of his voice at a table. She knew her body went quiet against him. She had no idea whether that quiet was hers or whether it had been put there. And she knew exactly what Rhett had done for her when she was nothing. That part was hers. She had lived it. She did not sleep that night. It took her in the middle of the next session. It started as heat under her skin, low, and she thought it was the room. Then it climbed, fast, and her whole body went slack and burning at once, and she gripped the edge of the table because the floor was not holding still. The man beside her stopped talking mid-word. Then every head in that hall came up together. She smelled it a breath after they did, coming off her own skin, sweet and heavy and impossible to take back. Chairs went back from the table. An elder pressed both hands flat to the wood and did not move them. A young Hollowbrook wolf near the door made a sound in his chest that was not human, and his eyes had gone dark, and he was already halfway out of his seat. Every unmated male in that room was turning toward her. Thea tried to stand, and her legs would not do it. He was beside her before anyone in that hall could move. Ronan had her off the chair and up against his chest before Rhett was fully out of his seat, and then he opened his pheromones at full strength and drove them into the room. The hall buckled. Men went down onto the table, onto their knees, hands over their heads. The young wolf at the door hit the floor and stayed there. Even Rhett had to catch the back of his chair, and by the time he had straightened, Ronan was already carrying her out. She could not hold her own weight. Her hands were fisted in his shirt, and her face was in his throat, and she was making sounds she would be ashamed of later. Somewhere behind her, she heard Rhett shout her name. A man came out of a side passage into the corridor ahead of them, scented her, and went for them without a word. Ronan put him into the wall one-handed and kept walking. He carried her into a room and put her down. Then he turned and shut the door and drove the bolt home, and when he tested it and it held, he stood with his hand flat against the wood and his head down, breathing. "Ronan, I know. Please. I know," he said, and came to her. She woke into quiet. It was dark outside. The burning was gone, and her neck ached where it met her shoulder. She put her fingers to it and felt the mark, raised and warm, and lay there with her hand over it. Her wolf was silent, not held down, the way Thea had been holding her down since the night he walked into the hall. Silent, because there was nothing left to push for. It was the first peace she had known in her own body in days. Behind her, an arm came around her waist and pulled her back against him. "You are awake." She went still. His voice had come from inside her own head. "The mind link," Ronan said. "It comes with the mark. You will get used to it." She did not know what she was supposed to say to a man she had known for days and would now belong to for the rest of her life. She had no words ready for that. So she stayed where she was, with his arm around her and the mark under her fingers, and let herself be held. "Sleep," he said. "We leave tomorrow." She slept. Rhett was in the corridor in the morning. He had been there all night. She could see it in him. Ronan's hand tightened on her arm, and then it eased. The mark was on her neck. There was nothing left in this house to fight anyone for. Rhett looked at it for a long moment. Whatever was left of his face when he lifted his eyes again, Thea would carry it for the rest of her life. "I asked you if what you felt was yours," he said. "Rhett, I have my answer," he said it quietly. "Do not give it to me again. I do not think I could stand it twice." "You were not nothing to me," she said. "Everything you did for me was real. It is still real. It is mine, and nobody can take it. I know it." His jaw worked. "I have loved you since we were children. I would have loved you every day until I died, and I would have made you Luna, and I would have been good to you." He stopped, started again. It was never going to be enough. I have known that since the moment he walked into my hall. I just was not ready to say it. He looked at Ronan then. Not a challenge. He did not have one left. "Be good to her." "I will." Rhett nodded once, and turned, and walked away down the corridor, without looking back, because there was no version of looking back that he would have survived. They signed at midday, hunting rights, safe passage, wounded treated by whichever healers were nearest. 60 years of a feud went into ink in under an hour, and Thea sat at that table and heard her own words read back to her from the page. She left Hollowbrook in the afternoon with everything she owned in one bag. Rhett was not on the steps. She had not expected him to be, and she was grateful for it. At the gate, Ronan's hand found the small of her back, and the mark warmed under her collar. "Frightened?" he said, inside her. No. It was the first completely true thing she had said since the day he walked into that hall. She had been an Omega in a house full of people who looked past her, for as long as she could remember. Nobody had ever come across a room for her. Now the Alpha of Ironmarch had put his mark on her throat in front of his enemies, and his own men, and there was not a wolf living on either side of that border who did not know exactly who she belonged to. She walked out through the gate at his side, and she was not nobody anymore. If this story moved you, do me a favor before you go. Hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me who you would have chosen. Rhett, who loved her every day when she was nobody, or Ronan, who crossed a room for her the second he found her. I read every single one, and I already know this one is going to divide you.